everybody! Today's video is a little bit different than the others, but I hope it's just as enjoyable. Before we start, like, share, subscribe, and shoot me a comment. Seriously, I love the comments, and they can be about almost anything. The representation of disabilities in media is not always perfect. Not that it's widely wrong or insulting, but most of the time, the characters with disabilities are played by typical people, which seems to make sense. How many people in the world who have disabilities typically choose performing arts as a career? Not many. How many of those few would be able to star in a movie where they could accurately represent a character who is similar to, but still different than them? Almost zero. All disabilities aren't the same either. Even someone who has the same kind of CP as I do may have a different severity and, in general, less independence. So that's another reason why actors with disabilities playing characters with disabilities doesn't always happen. Some actors don't fit the characters they're playing. Often, these characters are written to have moments where they can do things that typical people can do. Two examples of this, James McAvoy playing Professor X in a few of the X-Men movies, and Artie from Glee. Professor X suffers an injury to his back, and long story short, he ends up in a wheelchair. But before then, he walks around pretty fine. His loss of his legs is part of his story arc, so it'd almost be impossible to have someone who's permanently in a wheelchair walk around like a typical person for half a movie. Artie from Glee is really similar. Artie has been in a wheelchair since he was born, but he has one song in the first season where he gets up to perform safety dance and sing. Artie needs to be able to get up and do the choreography, so it would make sense that the actor would be 100% typical. There are also times in movies and TV where a character with a disability is in a situation that's not really realistic. And you're probably thinking, it's TV. When has TV ever been realistic? But some of the things are just stereotypes and what people think they know. I'm sure it's not intentional. I'm sure when things like that happen, the writers are trying their best with things based on how they view the world. But mostly, those writers don't have a personal connection with what it's like. And it's not as accurate as it could be with a writer who had family with a disability or some personal connection. The same thing applies to actors. Actors with disabilities are more likely to understand how a character would act, what things they would go through, and that would probably help develop the character more because they understand. Just because this is the norm doesn't mean that actors with disabilities are unheard of. In fact, there's one show that I really like that has an actor with CP and also is spot on with a lot of things in the disability world. That is Speechless. Speechless is created by Scott Silveri, also a producer of the show Friends. He grew up with an older brother with CP. Scott's brother died before Speechless aired, and the show was sort of a memorial to him. Speechless is about the DeMayos, a lower middle class family who has just moved from into a shabby, barely habitable house with a strict and fiery British mom, Maya, a laid back and fun dad, Jimmy, their neurotic, nerdy, and socially awkward son, Ray, their tough, active, and sometimes too angry daughter, Dylan, and their determined and independent son with CP, JJ. Micah Fowler, who plays JJ, has CP also. The difference between JJ and Micah is that Micah can speak, though he has trouble, and JJ is completely nonverbal. So he has a board and a laser light on his head to tell people what he wants to say. The show follows JJ and his family in their day-to-day lives and some of the things they experience. The show is a sitcom, but there are so many things in the show that are heartwarming and very real about having a disability. I think it's also a good portrayal of what it's like for the family members of a kid with a disability too. At least, I know that the mom reminds me a lot of my mom. In the second season, Zach Anner joined the crew as a writer. Zach Anner is a personal hero of mine. He has CP, is permanently in a wheelchair, and he has a YouTube channel where he shares a lot of things about his disability, both serious and as a joke. If his name sounds familiar, he gained worldwide attention after he won his own TV show through an Oprah Winfrey competition several years ago. Speechless was canceled after the third season, but when I watched it, there were so many things in the show that made me laugh and were very familiar. JJ goes to a new school that isn't accessible at all. He has to enter the school through a ramp for the garbage, goes through the agony of physical therapy, and deals with people treating him as inspirational and patronizing people with disabilities. Repeatedly, Maya intervenes in a fiery rage and improves things for JJ. no matter how difficult it is. JJ is passionate about filmmaking, and in addition to all the jokes, JJ grows and helps to advocate for people with disabilities. In one episode, JJ makes a film where he pours his heart and soul out and shows his family what his life looks like in his eyes. I identify so much with JJ because he's real. Micah Fowler is the best person to play JJ because he is spot on for how my life is, and he's funny too. If you enjoy comedy, and especially if you have a disability, I encourage you to watch Speechless. It's funny and enjoyable, but it's also heartfelt and real. It's a shame they only had 3 seasons. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. See you in 2 weeks. Bye! Check out the links in the description for some of my favorite clips from the show.